Yeah, my name's John G. Sutton. Welcome to Tales from the Jails. And today I'm going to be discussing an incident that took place in the HM prison Wormwood Scrubs in the year 1976. I was the officer in charge of allocating the new inmates, the new arrivals into C Wing. I was the officer in charge of allocating them cells, locating them into the cells and recording their presence on the master board, so that they actually could be accounted for. Anyway, on this particular day, there were about 5, 6 inmates came in, and I was the got to line them up on C1, and one at a time, take them, find them a cell, take them to the cell, put them in the cell, put the cell card outside, make sure that they're in there, that they're okay, they know where they are, and add their numbers and the details onto the master account in the main office down below. Then next inmate, do the same thing again. So it takes a little bit of time. This takes a little bit of time. You can't just go, all right, you go there, you go there, you there. You've actually got to do it in a certain order. So anyway, these 4 or 5, I think there were about 5 inmates lined up, and I'd done 2 of them, and it took me about 15 minutes each, and the guy who was stood at the end of the line came up to me, said, I want to make a complaint. He said, I don't think that you're actually dealing with this as correctly as you could. He said, I've been standing here for over half an hour now. I thought, are you aware of where you are? You're not this prison, I'm doing it. I mean, to my mind, I'm thinking I'm doing as fast as I can. I'm not messing you about deliberately. I said, so I said to him, a little bit facetiously. I said, so you're not exactly certain that I'm doing the job properly? He said, absolutely not, officer. He said, I'm sure that you could expedite this and get us located. I said, I'm here to please. Yeah, you can imagine, yeah. I said, I'm here to please. I said, no, it is your right to make a complaint. I said, you see that gentleman in the office there? There was like a little office with a window at the front, a bit like a ticket inspector's office, a ticket. I said, that is the officer who's currently in charge of C Wing. I said, you are at liberty. If you would like, I will take you over there and you can make a formal complaint about my performance. I said, I'm only here to supervise this and make sure that you're located properly. And if I'm not doing it right, then, by all means, it's your right to complain. I would like to do so, he said, Right. So I said, do come with me. So I took him up. Now, the guy, this is the absolute truth, the guy who was the officer in charge of C Wing at that time, sitting behind the partition, it was a senior officer who was roundabout as mad as they come. He was a former professional wrestler. He was extremely, extremely dangerous. And this guy, who'd obviously never been in prison before, is going to the desk to make a formal complaint about me. So I introduced him. I said, I'd like to introduce you to inmate such and such a body. And I said, this inmate would like to make a complaint. So I just stood to one side and let him get on with making his complaint to this senior officer, who I absolutely knew how dangerous he was. I can be a bit wicked at times. I didn't want to do it, I was just being a bit facetious, Anyway, the guy goes into his routine about, well, I think that this officer is just not making the best effort. I mean, having been stood there for half an hour, I insist on being allocated a cell properly. This is not the way to treat an inmate, So the officer in charge leaned over to me and said, Mr. Sutton, said, immediately locate this man on C139, or whatever it was. I said, C1, yeah, are you sure? He said, immediately. So I said to this inmate, I said, I'm very sorry, that we've had to come to this. I said, I will deal with it immediately. I said, if you'll pick up your property, he had bits with him. I said, you come with me, I will follow my instructions and locate you in C139. I said, sorry for this delay. Perfectly all right, officer. I understand. So I led him down the landing, opened C139, and in there, believe it or not, those cells were allocated to what we colloquially termed the paraffin lamps. Now, the paraffin lamps were tramps off the streets of London who were brought into the scrubs unwashed, unscrubbed, lice-riddled, incontinent, doubly incontinent, absolutely stoned out the head, on meths, crack, you name it, they were on it. And of course, what can we do with them? We used to hose them down. Seriously, I'll talk about that in a bit, and clean them up as best we could. But when we put them in the cells, just didn't know where they were. And this guy, he'd complained, and that's where he was going. So I opened the cell. He took one look at the inmates, because there were two others in there who'd obviously pissed themselves, and the place stunk like a middin, but it was cleaned out every day, but no sooner did you get somebody to clean it out than they crapped it up again. So I said, welcome to your new cell, and he said, I'm not going in there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I had received enough complaints, so I just helped him through the door and shut him in, and got about my duties. Located everything on the notice board and all that. Where he was located, put his cell card outside the cell, and went back to my duties. I'd finished completing that and relocated the other 2 or 3 inmates, whoever it were. And I was sat in the what we call the Cardoma, which is the coffee room, where you go for a coffee after you finish your duties for 10 minutes, that's all you take. Just a little have a coffee, because you can't go all day without having some refreshment. And I was sat there, and all of a sudden I hear this bang, 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 and screaming. The hell's this? And I thought, I've got a good idea, yeah? So I went out, sure enough, down there, C139, there it was, banging on the door. The staff outside the door said, I'll deal with this, So I opened the door, and he comes running out, this fella, running out, and he's raving, he said, I can't stand it in there, get me out of here, get me out. Threw himself on the floor, screaming and kicking and crying and shouting. Right, I said, we need to get the hospital staff here. The hospital staff came, sedated him, put him on a stretcher, took him off into a padded cell in the hospital unit. He'd obviously about an hour inside the locked up with the paraffin lamps, had done his brain in. So I had a look and thought, who is this guy? Who is he? It turned out that he was a racing driver, a Formula One racing driver, who had been imprisoned for 12 months for smashing his Ferrari into a group of people and killing one of them. Not for the first time. For the second time. The first time he did it, he received a ban for 3 years or whatever, and fined thousands of pounds. He'd killed somebody before. Drunken driving. He was a drunk. So really, I suppose he was allocated in the right cells. Quite what happened to him after that, after he was taken to the padded cells in a state of utter collapse, I'm not exactly certain. But one thing I am quite sure of. During the rest of his time in prison, he would think very carefully about making complaints about staff. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this. Tales from the jails.